So if you're going to spend your money on the world's fastest shoe, it better be bloody good. I've spent well over £2,000 at this point trying to figure out what is the world's fastest shoe. A lot of my money, not sponsored, my own doing, but I am really curious. So I think I've dialed it down and I finally know what the world's fastest shoe is. But let's jump into the video. So before we jump into today's video, this is not sponsored. I have paid for these products myself. I think that's so important when it comes to giving feedback on shoes. If you do want to support the channel, you can like, subscribe, comment below, or we're running a sale right now at 262clo.com. The link will be in the bio. Well over 400 5-star reviews. Having a sale right now to try clear up the warehouse. You can check that out, but let's get back to the video. So the structure for today's testing was really simple. Similar to before, we're doing 5 times 3K reps. I kept the effort at the sort of lower end of marathon effort. That helped me not fatigue as the sort of test went on. Otherwise, the data can be a little bit skewed. So I didn't want to fatigue. But then I also chopped and changed when I wore certain shoes. Some of the sort of feedback from the previous test was, what if you warmed up into the session? What if the Asics Metaspeed Sky only won because it was worn at the end and you'd relaxed at that point? So what I did today was I wore the Asics shoe for a couple of reps, then I wore the Saucony shoe for a couple of reps, then I went back to the Asics shoe. I sort of feel like that was the best way to do this. Also in terms of effort level, it was at that lower end of LT1. And needless to say, the two sort of Saucony reps that I wore, there was a difference of 1 second per mile. So you can just trust that I'm pretty good at this effort thing. And that's sort of where the proof of the data comes from is I just find this rhythm and this flow. I'm not trying to favor any shoe. And that's where the data kind of came out. But let's get into how I felt, how the reps went, and we'll talk about that. So before we sort of get into the testing, the other thing that I did was I used gels. I used probably 3 to 4 gels, which is 75 to 100 grams of carbs. That seems excessive. If you're watching this video, it means that you want to be faster at marathon or running in general. Honest to God, gels and fueling will save you way more time than any super shoe. If you hit the wall, it's likely that you ran out of fuel. If you run out of fuel, it does not matter what super shoe you have on your feet, you will slow by 60 to 90 seconds per mile if you're lucky, perhaps more. And so start practicing fueling. I fueled today because it protected that, let's say for example, rep 5, I'm slower. I didn't want it to be because I'd ran out of fuel. And so it was really important that I tried to limit losses today from things like, running out of fuel, getting too hot, etc., so that the results could be a bit more reliable. But it's still really important for you guys to start bloody practicing fueling, and that is a video that I'll do in future. So a little bit of context, I don't actually love how the Asics shoe feels. I wore it in the previous testing, it did come out on top. That's probably what surprised me, because it doesn't feel like a super shoe to me. For me, if you're going to spend 200 to 250 pound on a shoe, you should feel something. Do you know when you first ever wore super shoes and you got that nice like, wow, this is going to be epic, okay? I don't get that feeling when I put the Asics shoe on, I've got to be honest, but I didn't in the first lot of testing and it still came out on top. The Saucony Endorphin Elite 2, that has a bit of bounce to it, that has a bit of kick to it, that feels like it's giving you something back from the tarmac. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it comes out quicker. Like I said in the first video, didn't love how the Asics felt, but it came out the fastest. Saucony Endorphin Elite 2 feels absolutely incredible, you feel that bounce, and I really like that. Some people do, some people don't, but like I said, it does not mean that it will be quicker, and that's what we're here to discuss. So let's jump into the reps. First 2 reps, the 3K reps, I wore the Asics shoe. Next 2 reps, I wore the Saucony Endorphin Elite 2, and then in the final rep, I went back to the Asics shoe. That was just to make sure when I'd found my flow that we're jumping back into the Asics shoe to make sure that you didn't just warm up nicely into the session and then not give the Asics shoe another shot. It was important. So the first 2 reps, I was something like 519 per mile and then 525. To be honest, I wasn't feeling great. I was doing my best to keep Moxie around that sort of 30%, but it was kind of dropping down to 28. That was making me feel a little bit negative because actually 27, 28%, you've moved into a completely different energy system. You're now kind of jumping into LT2 and no longer LT1. And that kind of pissed me off a little bit. So I was starting to feel a little bit deflated, a little bit negative. And then I changed shoe into the Saucony Endorphin Elite 2. And I just felt brilliant. And it sort of gave me, I will jump into the splits, but it gave me this wonderful feeling where it was like, if we're beating ourselves up in training, right? Don't switch shoes all the time. and then get negative that you're a bit slower. Because for all you know, you were possibly just a bit slower because you were wearing a different set of shoes than another set of shoes. And let's be honest, as runners, we get upset between anything from 5 to 10 seconds per mile. And sometimes a different pair of shoes or the weather could make that big difference. And so rep 3 and rep 4, I went from rep 2 was 5:26 per mile to suddenly I'm running 5:14 per mile. 5:14 per mile. 9 seconds is that per mile? More, 12 seconds per mile. Mental. So I could not believe that one shoe at this level for that type of money was giving me that much more. So that was exciting. That sort of brought the psychology around to a good place. And like I said, I knew the first time I wore the Endorphin Elite 2 that it just felt good for me. I don't know how it feels for other people. You can comment below. But for me personally, it just felt really good. So I did the next rep, tried to sort of sit at that same effort. At this point, Moxie was sitting at 31, 32. In other words, I was comfortably inside the sort of zone that I wanted to be in. And then that came out at like 5:15. So pretty much spot on, 1 second per mile difference. And then I went back to the Asics shoe, which I was already not looking forward to doing. It's not that like I felt tired or anything like that. I just knew I didn't love how it felt in the first 2 reps. And I literally probably feel like I would have did 2 or 3 more reps in the Endorphin Elite 2 because it just felt good. I was getting into a nice rhythm. So I'm back into the Asics shoe, felt like the right thing to do. And I ended up coming in at 5:19 per mile. And so still 4 to 5 seconds per mile slower than the Endorphin Elite 2. And so if I do some maths in my head, 14:15, so pretty much spot on, 14.5. 19:26 is 7, say 3.5. The Asics shoe averaged about 5:22 versus say 5:15. You're talking like 7 seconds per mile, which is a pretty big chunk given that the Asics shoe beat the Alphafly 3, the Adios Pro 4. I mean, take a bow, Saucony Endorphin Elite 2. Really, really take a bow. The Saucony Endorphin Elite 2 absolutely battered the Asics shoe today. Absolutely battered it. But I am a little bit concerned with how much bounce it's given you. And my sort of concern there is I did have a couple of messages on, Instagram, some sort of DMs, and other people were agreeing that it is really fast, but perhaps that sort of like bounciness can end up beating the legs up, beating the muscles up. And I'm not really sure if, if I'm running 3 hours, 4 hours for the marathon, if that's the best thing for the calves. What I would say is if you're going to wear the the world's fastest shoes, you better be doing your gym stuff. Super, super important that you're doing your proprioceptor stuff, your gym stability stuff. Check out that kettlebell routine. And I'm not even telling you that just to watch another video. I'm telling you that because it comes at a cost. If you want to wear these fastest shoes in the world, you better believe that your legs, your balance muscles, your feet muscles, they will need to be in a really strong place to be able to handle that. Bear in mind that companies are investing millions in you believing that a certain shoe is the fastest shoe in the market. Millions, I mean millions with a capital M. All these fastest professionals in the world wearing their shoe. But if you got these guys in the likes of a Saucony shoe or perhaps a Puma shoe, you're going to see really fast times. Also bear in mind that it can be slightly different for every person. And it's not just, perhaps what's the fastest. Maybe another shoe will suit you better. Maybe it'll just feel better when you pull it on. Maybe it looks better for you. And that's always something to bear in mind. You might also get a deal on another shoe and it doesn't make it a bad shoe. We're really talking about fine margins here. And often the 5 to 10 seconds per mile that you might gain at the early portion of the race, if it does cause some muscle breakdown or stability issues later in the race, be sensible about that. But I have to say, the Endorphin Elite 2 looks like it's going to be my next sort of race shoe. Definitely for marathon, definitely for half marathon, and definitely probably 5K and 10K. I bloody love it. And I really wish when I was in my peak fitness, it's the likes of a shoe that I was wearing, because the Asics Metaspeed Sky Paris absolutely battered the shoe that I wore when I was running my personal best and when I ran 2:11 at Dublin. So it's a shame that I didn't have them back then, but of course I do now. But that's all I've got for you guys today. If you could like, subscribe to this video. I hope you found that useful. Hope you enjoyed that. If there's any other sort of topics you'd like me to sort of talk about, you can comment below. If you'd like, check out 262clo.com. Well over 400 5-star reviews now. It's amazing at the growth that the company's, getting and the traction that it's getting. But people really do love the product. So you can check that out. But do take care, be nice to yourself, and keep training hard.